It was a stifling and oppressive morning. The hot city air dragged itself across the avenues, drowned by the incessant sound of luxury cars. However, Helena didn't notice any of it. Sitting by the window in her family's apartment, her gaze lost in the crowd below, her mind was trapped in a single scene, the last conversation with her mother. "How could you, Helena? He's just a poor man. How could someone with so much potential lower themselves to this? To him?" Her mother's words still stung, reverberating like a death sentence to her feelings. The humiliation Helena felt came not only from the open criticism, but from the way her mother disguised her disgust, as if she wanted her to be ashamed of herself for loving a simple man. A man who had no wealth, no prestigious name, and whose past was filled with nothing but struggle. Helena took a deep breath, trying to push the shame aside, but she knew it was in vain. She could feel the weight of society's eyes on her, judging her for straying from the right path. A path her family and friends had determined for her, filled with titles, appearances, and wealth. But Helena's love for Luiz, a man with no title or riches, was genuine, and that made her even more vulnerable to scorn. She felt like an outsider in a world that only cared about status. Her phone vibrated constantly at her side, an onslaught of messages from friends and acquaintances. Many had distanced themselves, but now, after Helena's decision, they were full of questions. The accusation was clear, veiled in each message. "How can you be with him? Don't you see what you're doing? He's just a no-future guy." She knew those words were just a reflection of a society that couldn't accept such a mistake. But deep down, something in her heart told her Luiz's truth was about to be revealed, and it would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone around her. What started as a simple relationship was about to explode into something no one could foresee. She didn't know whether to fear or embrace the truth, but one thing was certain: it would shatter all the illusions. Helena didn't know it, but a revelation about Luiz would soon come to light, and with it, her entire life would change. The poor man she was involved with wasn't who everyone thought, and the truth about his origins would be the key to destroying everyone's prejudices. His past, something they could never have imagined, would not just change their perception of him, but of her as well. Will they be able to accept the truth when it comes out? Helena thought, anxiety taking over her chest. She knew nothing would ever be the same. Not their love, not society, not her. And deep inside, she wondered if she was ready for the consequences of a truth so powerful it could alter the course of her life, and perhaps even free her from the chains that bound her to a life she never truly chose. Helena could hardly sleep that night. Every time her eyes closed, a storm of emotions swept over her. The sound of her mother's voice, the harsh words, the expectations, they all swirled in her mind. It felt as though the world was closing in on her, trapping her in a place where nothing was real anymore, where she was constantly torn between the life she knew and the one she longed to have. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock on the door. Startled, she wiped her face, not realizing she had been silently crying for hours. She tried to compose herself before opening the door. It was Luiz, standing there looking uncertain. The distance between them had only grown since the confrontation with her mother, but his presence was a comfort she needed. "Helena," Luiz whispered, his voice thick with concern. "I can feel you're drifting away. I don't want you to pull away from me, but I can't stop the way they see me. I don't know how to fight it, and I'm scared that it's hurting you." She looked into his eyes and saw the pain he carried. He had never asked for this. The life he had built for himself wasn't meant to be one of luxury or prestige. He had always worked hard to carve out a place for himself, but that was never enough for the people in her world. And now, Helena was caught in the middle, forced to make a choice that could break her heart in ways she wasn't ready for. "Luiz, I don't care what they think," she said, her voice trembling, "but I can't stop them, and I'm afraid. Afraid that the life we've built will crumble the moment they find out the truth." Luiz stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, a gesture so simple yet so profound. It was in this moment that Helena realized how much she had already invested in him, not just emotionally, but spiritually. In him, she had found someone who didn't see her as a means to an end, someone who truly understood her. "Helena," he began, his words steady but full of something unspoken. "There's something I need to tell you, something you deserve to know. The truth. It's bigger than both of us. And it's time you learned what's been hidden from you." Her breath caught in her throat, and the room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in once more. Luiz had never been one to shy away from hard truths, but this felt different. Whatever he was about to say would change everything. Helena took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. "What are you talking about?" Luiz looked down, his eyes full of a sorrow she had never seen before. "It's about who I really am, Helena. About my past. The man you know me as. He's not the whole story." The weight of his words hit her like a tidal wave. She stood there, frozen, unable to process what he had just said. The truth she had feared all along was finally at the door, waiting to shatter everything she thought she knew. "Are you ready for the truth?" Luiz asked, his voice soft but carrying an undeniable intensity. Helena's stomach twisted in knots. She had always known there was something more to Luiz than met the eye, something hidden beneath the surface. But nothing could have prepared her for the revelation that was about to unfold. She was standing on the edge of a cliff, and everything she had ever believed was about to crumble. The silence in the room was deafening. Helena stood motionless, struggling to comprehend Luiz's words. "You're not just a poor man," she whispered, her voice trembling, as the weight of the revelation pressed down on her chest. Luiz sighed deeply, his face etched with a pain that Helena hadn't seen before. "I never wanted you to know like this, but there's no escaping the truth anymore. I've been hiding it for too long." He ran his hand through his hair, as if gathering the strength to continue. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a yellowed envelope. "This is my past, Helena. It's time you knew who I really am." Helena hesitated, her fingers grazing the worn paper, feeling the heaviness of what it might contain. She had imagined many things, but this was something entirely different. The envelope trembled in her hands as she tore it open, pulling out several pieces of paper. Her eyes froze on the first one, a birth certificate with a name she instantly recognized, Mora. Helena's breath caught in her throat. You're from the Mora family." Luiz nodded slowly, his face taut with an emotion she couldn't read. "Yes, but I was raised far from them. My mother left when I was young, and I was raised by my grandmother in a small town. I've never been part of their world, but my name, that's something I can't escape." Her world tilted. The Mora family was notorious, rich, powerful, controlling everything, and Luiz, the man she had come to trust, to love, was their son. Her vision blurred, the reality of it all crashing down on her. "But you're nothing like them," Helena said, her voice cracking with disbelief. "You're not like the people they are." "You're not like them?" Luiz interrupted gently, his voice heavy with sorrow. "No, I'm not, but I've always carried that name, that weight. And it's what people see when they look at me, not who I really am." Helena stepped back, her mind spinning, trying to piece together the man she thought she knew. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, the hurt in her voice unmistakable. "I was afraid," Luiz admitted, his voice breaking. "Afraid you'd see me the way they do. Just another privileged man. I didn't want that. I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for the family I came from." Helena's heart ached. How could she love him for who he was, when everything she thought she knew about him had been a lie? The man she thought was simple, pure, untainted by the world around him, was, in fact, tied to the very thing she had feared most. Her world, her trust in him, was crumbling. She looked at the papers in her hands, unable to process them. Her breath was shallow, her mind racing in 1,000 directions. Everything was different now. Luis was no longer the man she had fallen in love with, or at least he was no longer just that. He was something else, someone else. The room felt colder, the air thicker, as if it had been drained of all warmth. Luis stood in front of her, waiting for her reaction, his expression just as lost and desperate as she felt. "I need time," Helena finally said, her voice shaking, her heart torn. "I need to understand all of this. I need to think." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with uncertainty. She didn't know what to believe anymore, but one thing was clear. The truth had shattered the world she had built with Luis, and she wasn't sure if they could ever rebuild it. The days after the revelation felt like a blur. Helena couldn't escape the weight of Luis's truth, and it consumed every part of her. The moment they'd shared, full of warmth, of love, now felt like a distant memory, one that didn't belong in the world she knew. She hadn't seen Luis since that night, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to. Each time she thought about him, doubt crept in, along with the gnawing question, who was he really? Her phone vibrated, but she ignored it. It was her mother again. She had called several times, demanding to know what was going on. But Helena wasn't ready to answer. She wasn't ready to explain herself, not to her mother, and certainly not to the world. She already felt the eyes on her when she went out. The whispers were growing louder, the judgment clearer. The people she thought of as friends now looked at her with a mix of pity and judgment. Everything was changing, and it wasn't just Luis's revelation. It was the world around her, the world that had once felt like her safe place. Now it felt like it was slowly closing in. By the afternoon, her phone rang again. It was Luiz. She hesitated before answering, feeling her pulse quicken. His voice was familiar, but it felt distant now. "Helena, please, I need to see you. We need to talk," he said, his voice pleading. "I know this is hard, but I want to make things right." Her heart ached at the sound of his voice. She missed him. She missed how he made her feel alive, how he saw her for who she truly was, not just the life she was born into. But could she trust him now? "Luiz, I don't know if I can do this," she said, her voice shaky. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore. Everything feels like a lie." There was a long pause before he responded, and when he did, his voice was softer. "I never lied to you, Helena. I just didn't tell you everything. But now you know, and I'm asking you to see me for who I am now, not who I was." Helena took a deep breath. His words hurt, but there was truth in them. "But who are you now, Luiz? You're not the man I thought I was falling in love with." The silence stretched between them. She could feel the distance growing, the unspoken truths weighing heavily in the air. "I need time, Luiz," she said finally, her voice stronger now. "I need time to think about everything." "I understand," he replied quietly, "but I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here when you're ready." Helena hung up, feeling a cold emptiness settle in her chest. She didn't know what to feel anymore, didn't know what the future held. The man she loved wasn't just a simple man from a humble background. He was from a powerful family, a family whose world was so different from hers. The truth had shattered everything, and she wasn't sure if there was a way back. She walked to the window, staring out at the city below. The light was fading, and she couldn't help but feel the weight of the decision ahead of her. Could she move forward with Luiz, or would the truth tear them apart? As the sun set, she realized that no matter what, she couldn't go back to the life she once knew. But could she embrace the future with him? Or was that too much to ask? Helena couldn't shake the suffocating feeling that had taken over her. The air in her apartment was thick, like the weight of all the unanswered questions pressing down on her. Luiz's truth had shattered everything she thought she knew, and now she was caught between two worlds, the one she'd always known and the one she had built with him. Her mother had called again, the voicemail full of concern and judgment. Helena finally picked up after days of silence. "Helena, where have you been? What's going on with you and that boy, Luiz?" Her mother's voice was sharp, filled with a mix of disbelief and anger. "I've just been thinking," Helena replied quietly, trying to steady herself. Thinking, her mother scoffed. About him? You can't seriously be considering throwing your future away for someone like him. Helena's chest tightened. She had expected this, but it still hurt. I'm not throwing anything away, she said firmly. I love him, Mom. There was a pause. You think you love him? You don't even know who he really is, her mother snapped. He's not who you think he is. And if you keep this up, neither are you. Helena felt the sting of those words. I'm not a child anymore. I'm choosing for myself, and I don't need your approval. She ended the call, her heart heavy. The words hung in the air, but they didn't feel like home anymore. That night, as she sat on the balcony, staring out at the city, her phone buzzed. Luiz. She hesitated before answering. Helena. His voice was soft, almost pleading. I know things are complicated, but I can't stop thinking about you. I'll wait for you, whenever you're ready to talk. Her chest tightened. Luiz wasn't just from a powerful family. He was the man who had been there for her when no one else had. Luiz, she whispered, her voice shaky. I don't know what to do anymore. Everything's changed. I'm not asking you to forget it all, he said gently. I'm asking you to trust me. We can figure this out together. Please don't give up on us. Helena fell silent. Her heart ached, torn between what she had always known and what she was afraid to lose. Give me time, she said softly. I need time. She ended the call, staring at the screen, knowing the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She had no idea how long it would take, or what the future held, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. Helena spent the next few days lost in her thoughts, her mind constantly spinning. Every corner of her world had shifted, and she wasn't sure which direction to turn. She had distanced herself from her mother, from her friends, and even from Luiz. The silence between them was deafening, and it only made the truth harder to face. The phone calls and messages had stopped coming from Luiz, and it hurt more than she expected. She had told him she needed time, but now that time felt like a prison. She missed him, but every time she thought about calling him, the fear crept in again. Fear of what he might represent now. Could she still trust him, knowing the truth about his family? Was love enough to overcome the legacy that was thrust upon him? One morning, her mother showed up unannounced at her apartment. Helena hadn't expected it, but as soon as she saw her mother's stern face, she knew the conversation was inevitable. Helena, we need to talk, her mother said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Helena stood in the doorway, unwilling to let her mother into the space she had tried to make her own. What is it, Mom? I know you've been avoiding me, her mother continued, crossing her arms. I'm not going to sit here and pretend everything's fine. That boy, Luiz. You're making a huge mistake. Helena felt a surge of frustration, but she held her ground. Mom, I've told you before. I'm not making a mistake. I love him. Her mother's expression hardened. You don't understand, Helena. He's from a family that's nothing but trouble. They'll drag you into their world, and you'll lose yourself in it. You think you're in love with him, but you're just blinded by a fantasy. Helena shook her head, a wave of anger rising in her chest. I'm not blinded, Mom. I know who he is. I know he's not perfect, but neither am I. I've made my decision. Her mother stepped forward, reaching for her hands. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. You think you're strong enough to fight them, but you're not. You'll regret this. Helena pulled her hands away, her voice shaking. I'm not a child anymore. I don't need you to protect me. I need you to trust me. Her mother looked at her, the disappointment evident in her eyes. I can't do that. I won't sit back and watch you throw away everything for someone who doesn't even belong in your world. With that, she turned and left, leaving Helena standing there, heart heavy with words left unspoken. The silence in the apartment felt suffocating. She had always known her mother wouldn't approve, but hearing it out loud, so final, was something else. As the door clicked shut behind her mother, Helena sank onto the couch, her mind spinning. She wasn't ready to lose her family over this, but the truth was, she had already lost a part of herself in trying to fit into the world they had chosen for her. She had given up her own voice for years, but Luiz had given her the courage to hear it again. She stared at her phone, the silence between her and Luiz growing unbearable. She missed him more than she could admit, but she didn't know how to bridge the gap between what she had been taught and what she had come to believe. For the first time in a long while, she realized that the hardest part wasn't the truth about Luiz. It was the truth about herself. She needed to make a choice, and it couldn't be postponed any longer. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Helena was trapped in her own thoughts, torn between the life her family had planned for her and the life she had begun to build with Luiz. The silence between them grew louder, and with each passing moment she felt more lost. She needed to face the truth, the uncertainty that had been gnawing at her for so long. Her phone sat on the table, an ever-present reminder of the choice she had to make. She had told Luiz she needed time, but now time was running out. She couldn't keep avoiding him, couldn't pretend anymore that she wasn't hurting. That evening, after another day of silence, she finally did it. She picked up the phone and dialed his number. His voice came through immediately, filled with a mix of hope and caution. "Helena, I've been waiting for you to reach out." "I know," she replied, her voice tight. "I've been avoiding you and I'm sorry, but I need to talk about everything." "I'll come over," Luiz said, his tone soft but firm. "Just tell me when." "Tomorrow. I'll be here," she answered, her heart pounding. She had made the decision. Tomorrow they would face the truth. The next day, as the clock ticked closer to the hour, Helena paced nervously. When the doorbell rang, her heart skipped a beat. She opened the door to find Luiz standing there, his eyes full of uncertainty. Without a word, he stepped inside, and for a moment, the two of them just stood there, the weight of the unspoken words filling the space between them. Finally, Luiz spoke. "I don't want to lose you, Helena. I never did. I know the truth about me is hard to accept, but I can't change who I am. What I can change is how I love you. If you'll let me." Helena swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "I've been thinking a lot. About us, about my family and my life, and I realized I can't go back. I can't live in the world I was in before, but I don't know if I can live in yours either." Luiz stepped closer, taking her hand. "I'm not asking you to live in my world, Helena. I just want you to live in the one we can build together." Helena looked at their intertwined fingers, feeling the weight of his words. "I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore," she whispered, the tears threatening to fall. "But I want to try. I want to try with you." He gently wiped away a tear, his voice full of conviction. "We'll figure it out together, I promise." As they kissed, it wasn't just relief that washed over her, but a deep understanding. Love wasn't about perfection or easy choices. It was about fighting for each other, even when it seemed impossible. And in that moment, Helena knew, whatever the future held, she wasn't alone anymore. A few days after their conversation, things between Helena and Luiz began to settle, but an unspoken tension still lingered in the air. Despite their promise to figure it out together, the reality of their situation kept creeping back into their thoughts. Helena knew that love alone wouldn't fix everything. There were too many obstacles in their way, and some of them were far beyond their control. Helena had spent her entire life trying to meet the expectations of others. She had played the part of the perfect daughter, the obedient girl who followed the rules and never strayed too far from the path. But now, with Luiz by her side, she was beginning to feel the weight of those expectations pressing down on her more than ever. Her family had already made it clear they didn't approve, and the whispers from her friends had only grown louder. It wasn't just her family's disapproval that stung. It was the fact that she had spent so many years building a life based on what others expected of her, not what she truly wanted. Now, standing on the other side of that decision, she didn't know how to reconcile the two parts of her life, the one she was expected to live and the one she was building with Luiz. "Helena, we need to talk," Her mother's voice cut through her thoughts as she entered the living room unannounced. The tension in the room was immediate, and Helena knew this conversation was going to be harder than any she had faced before. "I'm listening," Helena replied, keeping her tone calm, though her heart was racing. Her mother sat down across from her, a look of frustration clouding her features. "I can't keep pretending like everything is fine. You've made your choice, but you don't understand what you're risking. You're throwing away everything we've worked for, everything we've built." Helena clenched her jaw. "I'm not throwing anything away, Mom. I'm choosing my own path." "Your path?" Her mother's voice rose, filled with disbelief. "This isn't some rebellious phase, Helena. This is your future, your reputation. You don't just walk away from all of that. And for what? A man who comes from nothing? A man who has no place in your world?" Helena stood up, feeling the anger bubble to the surface. "I'm not a pawn in your game, Mom. I'm not going to live my life for you. I've spent enough time trying to be what you wanted me to be. It's time I start living for myself." Her mother's face softened, but the disappointment was still there, sharp in her eyes. "You don't realize how much you're risking, Helena. I just want what's best for you." Helena's chest tightened. She didn't know how to explain to her mother that what was best for her wasn't the life her mother had planned, but the life she was choosing with Luiz. But no matter what she said, she knew her mother would never understand. "I know you think you're protecting me," Helena said quietly, "but I need to make my own mistakes. I need to live my life on my terms." Her mother stood, shaking her head. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice filled with sorrow. "I just hope you realize it before it's too late." As her mother walked out, the silence that followed felt even more suffocating. Helena wasn't sure what the future held, or if she was strong enough to face it. But she knew one thing. For the first time in her life, she was fighting for her own happiness, even if it meant losing everything she once thought was important. A dram! Helena woke up early the next morning, the weight of the previous day's conversation with her mother still heavy on her shoulders. It felt like she was living in two separate worlds, each pulling her in a different direction. On one side, there was the life her family had built for her, a life of comfort, social standing, and expectations. On the other, there was Luiz, who represented freedom, authenticity, and love, but also a future full of uncertainty and conflict. The decision she had made seemed both empowering and terrifying. She loved Luiz. There was no doubt about that. But the more she thought about her mother's words, the more she realized just how much she was risking. Could she really walk away from everything she had known? Could she build a life with Luiz, even if it meant rejecting the world she had been born into? She met Luiz for lunch at a quiet cafe, trying to push aside the doubts that had been swirling in her mind. When he saw her, his face lit up with a warmth that made her heart ache. The connection between them was undeniable, and despite all the uncertainty, there was still something about him that made her feel at home. "I'm glad you called," Luiz said, his voice warm as he reached for her hand across the table. Helena smiled weakly, squeezing his hand in return. "I've been thinking a lot, Luiz, about everything." He raised an eyebrow, his gaze softening. "What about?" "About my life, my family, and how everything has changed since we've been together." She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't know if I can keep pretending everything is fine. I've been living in a world that wasn't really mine, and now I'm not sure if I can just walk away from it all." Luiz's expression softened, but his eyes were filled with understanding. "You don't have to choose, Helena. You don't have to give up your family to be with me. I don't want you to feel like you're losing everything just to be with me." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. I've been living my life for everyone else, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't made for me. But now I feel like I've made a choice, and I don't know if I can go back." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if they both understood that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, that their love would be tested in ways they hadn't yet imagined. "I don't want to lose you, Helena," Luiz said quietly, his voice filled with raw emotion. "But I also don't want you to lose yourself in this. If you need time, I'll give it to you. If you need space, I'll step back, but I'll be here waiting for you no matter what." Helena looked into his eyes, feeling a swell of emotion rise within her. She had always been afraid of losing herself, of losing her place in the world. But now, with Luiz by her side, she realized that maybe she wasn't meant to fit into that world at all. "I don't know what the future holds," she said softly, "but I know that I want to try. I want to try with you." Luiz smiled, a mixture of relief and love flooding his face. He reached out and took her hand, holding it firmly, as if to remind both of them that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together. Helena had known her decision to be with Luiz would come with consequences, but the weight of those consequences was far heavier than she had imagined. The days following their conversation felt like an emotional tug-of-war. There were moments of peace with Luiz, but those were often overshadowed by the fear and guilt creeping in from all sides. Her family's disapproval weighed on her like a constant presence, and it was starting to feel impossible to escape it. Her phone rang constantly with messages. Some were from friends, others from distant relatives, all filled with concern, judgment, or a mix of both. The whispers had begun to spread, and with every passing day, Helena could feel the weight of their eyes on her. It wasn't just her mother anymore. It was everyone. The people she had once trusted, the ones she thought would understand her, were now the ones casting doubts on her relationship. She felt isolated, trapped between two worlds, one that expected her to conform, and the other with Luiz, that made her feel alive but also uncertain. That afternoon, sitting in a cafe with Luiz, Helena felt a growing sense of suffocation. She could see the looks people gave them, the whispers that followed them as they walked out. It was clear their love didn't fit the mold. It was a reminder that they were both outsiders in the world they had once belonged to. "I don't think I can keep doing this, Luiz," Helena admitted, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. "Every time I go out, it feels like I'm fighting my family, fighting my past, and fighting myself. It's exhausting." Luiz took her hand across the table, his grip warm and reassuring. "I know it's hard, Helena. We're fighting against a lot, but I'm here with you every step of the way." Helena looked at him, her heart torn. "I don't know if I'm strong enough. I've spent so much time trying to live up to everyone else's expectations, trying to be what they wanted me to be. And now, I feel like I've lost who I really am in the process." Luiz squeezed her hand. "You haven't lost yourself. You're just finding out who you really are, and that's not easy. But I'll be here. You don't have to do this alone." Helena looked down at their intertwined hands, feeling both comforted and conflicted. She loved Luiz, but she also felt the pressure of the life she had built before him. The world she had always known was falling apart, and she wasn't sure if she could ever fit back into it. "I don't know what the future holds, Luiz," she whispered, "but I need to find my own path. I need to stop living for everyone else and start living for myself." Luiz nodded, his face softening. "We'll take it one step at a time, together." But even as she held his hand, Helena couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing deep within her. The life she once knew wasn't the same anymore, and neither was she. The road ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: it wouldn't be easy. And no matter how much she loved Luiz, she had to find the courage to face the future on her own terms. The following days felt like a slow unraveling. Every corner of Helena's life was now filled with tension. Her phone, once a source of connection, now felt like a prison. The messages had only increased, and the calls from her mother had become more urgent, more insistent. Each time Helena picked up the phone, a wave of guilt washed over her. She knew her mother was right, or at least that's what the world kept telling her. She was making a mistake. She was throwing away everything for someone who didn't fit into the life she was supposed to have. Yet as much as her family tried to pull her back into their world, she found herself sinking deeper into the one she had built with Luiz. It was raw, messy, and far from perfect, but it felt real. For the first time in her life, Helena wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. One afternoon, as she walked to the small apartment where she and Luiz had spent the last few weeks trying to navigate their new reality, Helena's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar face. "Helena!" a voice called out from behind her. She turned to see her cousin Mariana walking briskly toward her. Mariana had always been a voice of reason in their family, someone who, in the past, would have been on her side. But now, with the weight of her decision bearing down on her, Helena wasn't sure what to expect. "Mariana," Helena said, forcing a smile, "I didn't expect to see you." "I know," Mariana replied, her tone serious. "I've been meaning to talk to you. About everything." Helena felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "I don't need a lecture, Mariana. I'm fine." Mariana took a deep breath, her eyes softening as she looked at Helena. "I'm not here to lecture you. I just want you to understand what you're doing. This isn't just about you and Luiz. It's about your future, about everything you've worked for. Your family is worried about you. We all are." Helena's chest tightened. "I'm not a child anymore, Mariana. I'm making my own choices. I've spent my entire life doing what everyone else expected of me. This is the first time I'm doing something for myself." Mariana stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. "But have you thought about the consequences, Helena? Have you thought about what you'll lose? Your family is your foundation. What happens when you push them away completely? When things get hard with Luiz? Will you regret all of this?" The question stung. Helena opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't want to admit that, deep down, part of her was terrified of what lay ahead. She had chosen Luiz because he made her feel seen, valued, and loved. But now, with the weight of everyone's expectations on her shoulders, she wasn't so sure anymore. "I'm not saying you shouldn't be with him," Mariana continued, her voice softening. "But you need to think about the bigger picture. You need to think about yourself. This isn't just about love. It's about who you're going to become." Helena stood there, the words echoing in her mind. She had always been so sure of who she was supposed to be. But now, with everything on the line, she didn't know where to go from here. "Think about it, Helena," Mariana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want you to be happy, but you have to know what that truly means." As Mariana turned to walk away, Helena felt her heart heavy with uncertainty. The future, once so clear, was now filled with more questions than answers. Could she truly build a life with Luiz, or was she running away from the very things that had defined her? Helena sat in silence, staring at the cup of tea in front of her. She hadn't touched it, the steam long gone, just like her once certain feelings. The weight of her decision was pressing down on her chest, and she couldn't escape it. Her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions, torn between Luiz, the man she loved, and the life she had known for so long. How could she keep living in two worlds, each pulling her in different directions? It had been days since her conversation with Mariana, and the doubts she had tried to suppress now swirled relentlessly. She knew she couldn't keep ignoring the pressure from her family, the judgment from her friends, and even the internal battle she was fighting. Could she really walk away from everything she had been taught to value? Could she turn her back on the family who had shaped her, who had given her everything? As the door creaked open, Luiz walked in. He had been giving her space, but the silence between them had grown unbearable. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "Helena," he said softly, "we need to talk." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with exhaustion. "I know," she whispered. "I've been thinking a lot." "About everything." Luiz sat down beside her, his gaze searching her face for some sign of clarity. "What's going on? You've been so distant lately. I can't keep doing this if we're just drifting apart." Helena took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about my family, about everything I've been taught, and I realized I don't know if I can keep living like this. I don't know if I can keep fighting this fight. Every day feels like a battle, Luiz. A battle between the life I'm supposed to live and the one I want with you." Luiz's expression softened, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to choose between them and me, Helena. I never wanted you to fight for me. I just want you. But if you need time, if you need space, I'm here." Helena shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not that simple. I've spent my entire life trying to meet their expectations, and now I'm not sure if I can just walk away from all of that. But being with you, it's like I'm living someone else's life. I don't know where I fit anymore." Luiz gently reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her skin. "You're not alone, Helena. You've never been alone. Whatever you decide, I'll be here." Helena stared at their hands, the comfort of his touch fighting against the storm inside her. She loved Luiz, but the fear of losing everything she had known was paralyzing. She had to make a choice, and it wasn't just about love. It was about her identity, her future, and what she was willing to sacrifice. "I need to figure this out," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to find out who I really am in all of this. I can't keep living for other people. I need to find my own path." Luiz nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." Helena watched him walk away, feeling a pang of regret. But deep down, she knew that she had no choice. She had to face her truth, even if it meant losing everything she had once thought was important. As the days passed, Helena's uncertainty began to fade into a quiet resolve. She had spent so long trying to live up to everyone's expectations, but now, for the first time in her life, she was ready to live for herself. She wasn't sure how it would unfold, but the decision had been made. She would no longer let fear dictate her choices. The phone calls from her mother had only intensified, but now each message felt like an echo of the past. Helena had been avoiding them, but she knew it was time to face her family, to face her past. She couldn't keep hiding from them, not if she was going to build a life with Luiz. It was late one evening when her mother arrived at her apartment, unannounced as usual. The moment the door opened, Helena could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. "Helena," her mother began, her voice sharp, "I've been trying to reach you. You can't keep avoiding me. This is ridiculous. You're making a huge mistake." Helena stood in the doorway, her posture firm. "I'm not avoiding you, Mom. I just needed time to think." Her mother's gaze hardened. "Time? Time to throw away everything we've built? To throw away your future? This isn't just about you, Helena. This is about your family, your legacy. You can't just walk away from it all for someone who has nothing." Helena felt a wave of frustration build inside her. She had heard these words 1,000 times before, but today they didn't have the same power over her. She had made her choice, and she wouldn't let anyone make her feel guilty for it. "I'm not throwing anything away," Helena said, her voice steady. "I'm choosing my own path. I've spent my whole life doing what you wanted me to do, living the life you chose for me, and now I'm choosing to live for myself." Her mother's face softened, but the disappointment was still there. "You don't understand what you're giving up, Helena. You don't know how hard this will be. You think it's just about love, but it's not. It's about everything you've worked for, everything you've been given." Helena took a deep breath, stepping away from the door. "I know it won't be easy. I know there will be sacrifices, but I'm willing to make them. I love Luiz, and I'm not going to let anyone make me feel like that's wrong." Her mother's silence filled the room, and for a moment Helena wasn't sure what would come next. Would her mother accept her decision? Would she ever understand? "You'll regret this," her mother said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I just hope you realize that before it's too late." Helena closed her eyes, a mix of sadness and relief washing over her. "I won't regret it, Mom. I have to do this for me." Her mother turned to leave, and Helena watched her walk away, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she had taken control of her life. For the first time, she was living on her own terms. As the door closed behind her mother, Helena walked to the window, staring out at the city below. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to choose, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace. Helena stood at the edge of a new beginning, the weight of her decision still fresh but no longer heavy. In the weeks that had passed since her conversation with her mother, everything had changed, not just the way she saw her family, but the way she saw herself. She had made her choice, and now it was time to live with it. She had distanced herself from her old life, the life that had once been so familiar, so comfortable. The phone calls from her mother had stopped, though Helena knew the silence wasn't an end. It was just a pause. But that was something she had to accept. She couldn't live her life for anyone but herself anymore. Luiz had been her constant through it all. When the doubts crept in, when the fear of losing everything threatened to overwhelm her, it was his voice, his touch, that had brought her back. He had never asked her to choose between him and her family. He had only asked her to trust herself and trust in the love they had built together. Now, standing in the quiet of their small apartment, she knew she had made the right decision. The world she had once known would never fully understand her choices. Her family's expectations, the judgments of friends, the whispers of society. They were all part of a life that no longer felt like hers. Helena had learned something crucial in the past few months. That love wasn't enough to build a life. It took courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to face the consequences of your decisions. She hadn't been ready for those consequences when she first made her choice. But now, as she looked back, she realized she wouldn't change a thing. Luiz came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned into him, feeling the comfort of his presence, the safety of his love. "You okay?" he whispered, his voice filled with quiet concern. Helena smiled softly, turning in his arms to face him. "Yeah, I'm okay. I think I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." He smiled back, a look of relief and pride in his eyes. "I'm proud of you, Helena. You've been through so much, but you're stronger than I ever knew." She touched his cheek, feeling the warmth of his skin. "We've both been through a lot," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "But we're here now, and that's all that matters." The future was still uncertain, and there were many challenges ahead. But as they stood together, in that small apartment filled with love, Helena felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. The road she had chosen hadn't been easy, and it hadn't been without its cost. But in the end, it had led her to a place where she could be true to herself, to the woman she had always been meant to be. And with Luiz by her side, she knew she was ready for whatever came next.